This is the Self-Storage Radio Show, and my name is Nat Mecken. This podcast is all about the fabulous asset class that is self-storage. Hello. Welcome to the Self-Storage Radio Show. Today is only going to be a fairly quick sort of an episode, simply because I've got a fair bit on the go today. We're going to be leaving here around lunchtime, and we're actually going to expand one of our facilities, our Clermont facility. So we've just got 4. We've had that started off with 4 containers there, and there's another truckload of 6 containers getting delivered shortly. So we're actually heading off lunchtime today to go and get ready for them containers to get moved in. And I decided to jump on here and just do a quick episode and sort of just talk a little bit about our story, what we've got for self-storage. I haven't really sort of delved into that, so I thought, well, what better time since that self-storage is sort of heavily on my mind at the moment with going and expanding one of our facilities. So to just jump straight in, I guess, a bit of backstory about how we started off. So it was in 2021, and I had, my wife and I, we had started to invest in residential, single-family residential. We'd already bought a couple of single-family residential properties at that stage, and we were actually working on them. One of them was actually quite run down, and we were working on that. We spent about 3 weeks getting that house up and running. It was a fairly big project to get that one up to scratch to get rented out. And so just after work one evening there, I was just leafing through this it was just like a real estate lift out of a newspaper, and I saw this ad there for self-storage, and it was containerized self-storage, and so it was a facility made out of containers. And suddenly something just sort of clicked in my head, because I just said, I think that's me, really. That's sort of what I sort of felt. And so I rang that facility the next day and just sort of did a bit of secret shopping on them, asked them, what rates they had, and that sort of thing, what their rates were. And the more I thought about it, the more excited I got, because at that stage we had some industrial land that we'd bought in Richmond in northwest Queensland, and so we're actually in the process of getting a shed built on that land at the time, an industrial shed, and that only took up sort of some of the block. And so I said, well, we've got extra room there. We could start up a self-storage facility with containers there, and just get straight into it. So that's what we did. So that was mid 21. I think it was July 2021 when we got the containers moved in, and we started off with 2 containers. Now, Richmond is a population of about 480 people, so I said, well, if I can make this work in a population of 480 people, I can make it work anywhere. And there was no self-storage in the town at all, so I said, this is our gauge, really, whether it's going to work or not. And yeah, them 2 containers got leased up fairly quickly within the next sort of couple of months. And over time, we just started to move in more containers, and it just sort of grew from there. And that's when it was very basic at the time. We didn't have a brand, we didn't have anything. And when it sort of started to take off in our first Richmond facility, that's when we said, okay, I think we're going to take this a lot further. and turn this into something fairly big. So that's when we come up with the name Everyday Self Storage and the logo. I designed all that logo and everything, and so it sort of just went from there. The next the next 12, 18 months, we just sort of focused on expanding that facility. We'll just sort of moving in 1 or 2 containers at a time. And it was all sort of fairly low key. And then that's when I said, well, I think the next step we need to do is look for a town a bit bigger with a bit more population. So we sort of looked around this area, and I identified Cloncurry as a possible site. And so Cloncurry is, I think it's about 2,500 people, just off the top of my head. I can't exactly remember the figures, but it's around that 2,500-ish. So, same story. There wasn't really any self-storage to speak of in Cloncurry. And we had been looking at buying some land in Cloncurry, just like industrial land, for quite some time up until that point, just to build a shed on and that sort of thing, because we were starting to get into industrial sheds and that at the time. And everything was like quite expensive, at the time. We was trying to sort of find some industrial land, and everything was quite expensive for the capital that we had at the time. So that's when I got the idea of, I said, well, maybe I can lease some land. So we went to Cloncurry and spent 2 days just driving around town, talking to different businesses and that sort of thing. And eventually we hit the jackpot with one. There's a trucking business in Cloncurry who said, yep, we got some land here that you can lease. And so we said, rightio. Well, I sort of estimated that there'd be demand for like 20 containers. With the population that there was there. Well, we took out a lease for 20 container spots, on this land, and it just went absolutely gangbusters. And our landlord there, like, he still can't believe how quick it took off, and he's enjoying it because he's getting good rental money that we pay him. And we continued to grow that site until this day. We're onto our 3rd lease there now. We just kept expanding that area, and so it's really it went mad. So that was about mid 2023. We started there with that site, and and it just sort of it took off from day one, that site. But we're still expanding that site up until today. But over the last couple of years, we have still expanded. So, like I say, we got 4 facilities all up. So our 3rd facility was then Barcaldine in Western Queensland. There was a new industrial development happened there, with industrial land being released by the council. And so we went to Barkey, it's called, and we looked around there, and we identified what we thought was the best block for our self-storage business, and we purchased that block. So it was just virgin land, undeveloped, not fenced or anything. And so we bought that, and we immediately started to move containers into that, and we hit the ground running there pretty hard. We moved in, I think it was about 4 containers straight up, and then we kept loads coming in after that. And it was slow to start that site. It wasn't like Cloncurry at all. It was sort of slow, with lease up on those first few containers. But once we started to get our name and reputation out there, then it's starting to really go gangbusters as well. And then, which leads us to our 4th facility. So that's Clermont in like Central Highlands, Queensland, and there was a block of land there. There was actually 2 blocks of land there that they were industrial land, and they'd never been developed. They'd always just been sort of kicked from owner to owner without ever having anything done to them. And land is quite difficult to come by at Clermont, and there's been no sort of land releases there for a long time. And there was these 2 blocks of land that were like I say, they were just sort of privately owned and industrial land, and we ended up like they were quite expensive for what you got. Like they were typical mining town prices, sort of right up there. And when I'd try and pencil the numbers, I just said, no, it can't be done. Like they were just too expensive. But one of these particular blocks was it was a smaller block, but it was quite less money than the other block. And anyway, I decided, I thought, right, I'll bite the bullet and we'll buy this one. And blow me down, it had just had an offer put on it, I think a week before I rang up about it, and like it was for sale for years, so that's just the way it goes. And so I said, oh well, that's the end of that. So they were on opposite sides of the street, these 2 blocks, and so I said, well, we've lost that one, and I went back and looked at the one across the street, and I would run the numbers again, and I'm just like, nah, it can't be done, It's just for what we'd have to pay for it, we just couldn't sort of outlay that money up front, and it was through a real estate agent, and it was early 2025. It was like about the first 2 weeks into 2025, I think it was. And I just had to be just sort of cruising around on Facebook Marketplace, and I saw this ad pop up: land for sale, private sale, and then like a aerial view of the block that was for sale, and it said Clermont, and I immediately said, that's that block that I've been wanting to buy, and it was half the price of what it was advertised previously. So I got straight on the phone and I said, I'm really keen, and he was just trying to wrap up his company and wanted everything sort of wrapped up fairly fast, and this land was part of it, and he said it's the only catch is it's got to have a 1 week settlement, and everybody's still coming back from holidays, from Christmas break, all this sort of stuff. And I said, well, I'll see what we can do. And so we got straight onto our solicitors and everything, and they're like, yep. And we actually had the money sitting there. We didn't have to get finance or anything, luckily, because that would have been a deal breaker if we did. So yeah, we jumped straight in, and because I'd already looked at this block and did the research and everything, I knew exactly what I was buying. So we just said, yep, rightio, we'll take it. So we actually bought that with like a very, very fast. It was the fastest sort of real estate contract that we'd ever done. And so we started to move containers in there pretty soon after. I think it was a few months after we got gravel put down and that sort of things. I think it was May last year we got the first 4 containers moved in, and that was also a slow facility to start off. We had, vacancy for quite some time, but then in the last sort of few months, it's just been wall to wall. People wanting like more storage, and we haven't been able to give it to them. So that's why we got to the stage now where we've able to catch our breath, and we said, right, we're going to focus on expanding that facility. And so there's another 6 containers getting moved in there this week. So that's what we're off to do. This week we'll head to Clermont and get them units put in place, and that'll give us 10 units there. But we'll keep expanding that facility sort of for the rest of this year, and I think it'll keep expanding for a long time yet to come. The way that demand seems to be going there for storage at Clermont. So yeah, we've just like while we've kept like expanding the company and taking on more sites and buying more land and all that sort of thing. While that's been happening, we've still been expanding all our existing facilities at the same time. So back when we had like 2 sites and we were expanding one while we were starting the other, it wasn't all that hard to do. But now, because we're still having to expand the 4 sites that we've got, plus we're looking to get into more sites, it actually it's starting to slow us down a bit because we're having to deploy so much capital in so many different directions, and I'm sort of like traveling a lot between the different facilities, setting up more units and that sort of thing. It's we have lost our momentum simply because of the scale that we're sort of getting to the stage of now. So when we've been expanding these facilities, and all these facilities that we've got are just container facilities. We haven't built any permanent dwellings as yet. All just been 20-foot containers, and we've been like, a load of containers can be anywhere from 1 to like 6 that we bring in at a time. So you can fit 6 on a road train. So that's why we go a maximum of 6. And so that sort of works pretty good. Sometimes we get a B double load, which is 3, and we set them up, at a facility that we sort of not need in a big heap. And then, like our Richmond facility, where we're sort of starting to max that out, so we'll put just 1 at a time in, sort of thing. We, as demand sort of grows a little bit more, we'll put another 1 or maybe 2 in at a time. So we've got no hard and fast rule how many containers we bring in each time. It's just sort of what we think is needed to grow that facility a bit more. Yeah, and so I guess that's sort of where we're up to, and then moving forward from here. So we bought more land in Hughenden, so northwest Queensland again. It was the end of last year. Towards the end of last year, we bought that land, and we're just getting everything lined up to start building a facility on that site. Probably in the next maybe couple of months, I guess, we'll start moving containers into that facility, and get a self-storage facility happening on that side as well. So that will give us five facilities, and on top of that, we're still we're actively looking for like a already built self-storage facility that we can buy. And we've been looking at different ones of them and putting in a few offers and that sort of thing already this year. And so that's sort of what we're focused on, as well as building our own, where we're looking at actually buying ready-made facilities, because it'll sort of speed up the process a lot faster than developing our own sites. So that's where we're aiming for moving forward. And so that sort of pretty well just wraps up this episode. I just wanted to really point out, where we are with self-storage, and I've talked on the podcast before about other aspects of self-storage, but I just sort of wanted to let everybody know where we're at and where we're coming from as self-storage owners and operators and that sort of thing, because I've said before how much I love this industry, and I just I spend all my time thinking about self-storage. So that's why I've started this podcast, is just to just to talk self-storage, because I love to talk about it so much. So yeah, I think I'll just sign off here. Hope everybody's still with me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you.